Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead video. So I wanted to talk about this theory video. It's been a while since I've done a theory, and I wanted to talk about Dwight maybe returning as a villain in season 2 of The Walking Dead Dead City. I think it is very highly possible. Now, obviously, it depends on what happens with his story in season 8 of Fear the Walking Dead. Obviously, there's 6 more episodes left. Do they just kill the character off? I mean, if they do, then this theory is completely dead, but I don't think they will. I think that there's certain characters that they do want to keep around, especially because there is some unresolved story there between Dwight and Negan, right? There's a lot of story that they could tell there that would be very, very fascinating. Like, almost in a way, much more fascinating than the stuff between Maggie and Negan, because we've already gotten a lot of the Maggie versus Negan stuff for a couple of years now, but Dwight versus Negan, that's definitely very different because where their stories ended in terms of the last time they saw each other, I mean, it was just, there wasn't a lot of resolve there or anything like that. Daryl also just sort of kicked him out and said, if I ever see you around here again, I'll kill you, basically. It's been like over 10 years since that moment, and Dwight has not shown up yet to Alexandria. So, and also Daryl is also in France right now as well. So, like, I think at this point, if he were to see Dwight, I don't know if anything would really happen. Honestly, I don't even know what Daryl's reaction would be. But anyways, that's not the point of this video. I do want to talk about Dwight as the main villain here for The Walking Dead Dead City Season 2. So before going further, obviously, make sure to be a subscriber if you do want to get all my Walking Dead Dead City content like this. The show is premiering episode 4 tonight. I already have my review up on the channel. I also posted my episode 5 trailer breakdown, so if you're interested in that, that is also on the channel. Episode 5 is going to be a very interesting episode because there's this new character that they're introducing, and it really seems like as of now that she's going to be the main villain here of really everything. And I actually do wonder if she's a lot bigger than we're thinking, in the sense that maybe she's the ultimate leader and she sort of is like the owner of a bunch of different groups, right? Like there's the Barazzi and stuff with the Croat, she obviously owns that group, but like maybe there's others around New York City, right? Because right now we're just in Manhattan, but there's a lot more to New York City. So it would be really interesting to see how much they do explore, of the city in future seasons. There's a lot more that they're able to do. Like there's quite a bit of stuff that they're able to do here, but it does kind of feel like that's who this new character is going to be. And if she isn't that, like if she's just like, maybe she's the real villain or the real leader, I guess, and the Croat isn't, he's still sort of the, the second in command to all of this or whatever, then I mean, it still doesn't necessarily like ruin the theory anyways, because there was a teaser. I mean, a lot of people talked about it in their early reviews for the season of Dead City, that there was going to be this tease in episode 5 or 6. I believe it's in episode 6, actually, that would show that there's a lot more to here. There's a lot more to come in future seasons. There's a lot more groups, it really seems like, in New York City. So I think that, they definitely are setting the stage for this. And where Dwight comes into play here is, I mean, Fear the Walking Dead is obviously ending this year. We got 6 more episodes left. They're focusing more on Dwight and Sherry, Madison and Strand and etc. They'll be ending their stories. Dwight and Sherry's story is going to be really interesting in terms of how they end it, because I don't really see a relation or connection with their story and like Madison, right? Like they don't really know each other that well, if at all, really. So I really wonder how they'll end their story, if it's going to even be satisfying enough, because I don't really get where they're going, because they just sort of broke up now over, I don't even really know how to explain it because it's just so confusing. But when you look at Morgan, he left the show and they sort of teased that there's a lot more there, like he's out there looking for Rick Grimes. So I imagine, if there is going to be a season 2 for Rick and Michonne, or a season 3 or whatever, if they were to get Lenny James to come back, or if he wanted to come back, that it would have to be for something like that. Like he did mention that, like he said that he would return if there was a real reason to, right? But he's sort of done everything now. There would have to be something that is just like so crazy, so interesting and fascinating that he's like, I have to tell the story. And obviously him reuniting with Rick is like a big one, right? I'm sure he would come back for that. And they ended his story there. He's out there. He's going to go look for Rick now. That's honestly a really awesome way to sort of end it for some time anyways. Like you do want to pick up on that, right? Like you do want to have that reunion and then just those goodbyes and all of that. So I think they could do the same thing here with Dwight. I actually think that, I mean, obviously he's not going to go out there and just like necessarily look for Negan, right? But maybe he just leaves to like start a new life, and then he ends up in New York City. And in terms of the timeline, it does make sense, because Fear the Walking Dead right now is about where The Walking Dead was when it ended, give or take like a year or two, right? But Dead City is a few years after that. Like some people are saying 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, even like 5 or 6 years, right? So I don't think it's that long, but maybe like 4 or 5 years or something. It's quite a bit because Herschel has aged quite a bit. I think he's more like 14, 15 right now, whereas I think on Dead City, or not Dead City, but on The Walking Dead, he was like 9 or 10 years old or something. So it's been some time, but the point is the timeline, it still works. Like it matches pretty well here. So I think it's highly possible that over the course of a couple of years here, that Dwight could end up in New York City as a leader of one of these groups here. I mean, could you imagine the drama between Dwight and Negan? Like it would just be insane. Like, first of all, that reunion would just be so hyped, and it's more of just like the quality of Dead City, just to see that reunion on a show like that with that, just amazing quality. I think that it would just be really, I think really well received by fans. There's already been some connections made to the Saviors with the Croat and Simon, right? Like Simon actually returned to The Walking Dead. Like we actually saw him. Like that's insane. Like to think that we would actually see him again on a Walking Dead project is just crazy. I mean, obviously, I think with Tales of the Walking Dead, that also makes sense, but they're not really necessarily doing that show right now. I know they're hoping for a season 2 that might come out like next year, the year after, but they're not necessarily doing anything right now with that show. And I think that using these characters in a very smart way makes a lot of sense. And also that does, like, I know that some people might point out, well, if Dwight is the leader of a group in New York City, the Croat's also there. They were both former Saviors. Like, wouldn't the Croat mention something about Dwight, or wouldn't he know something about Dwight? I think it's very possible that Dwight was kicked out, or didn't even join the Saviors, I guess I should be saying, at the time that the Croat was over there at the Sanctuary, because he did join much later. I believe it was in season 6 early on, or maybe season 5. No, it was early on in season 6 that Dwight, like we saw him before he got the burn. I don't think he was necessarily a part of the Saviors at that point. Maybe he ran into him much later. I don't remember the exact story there, but I don't think at this point, because it's so close to when the Saviors ran into Rick's group, I don't think the Croat was involved here at this point. I think the Croat was involved much earlier than that, because at that point, they only really knew of the kingdom. So I think by the time Dwight got there, the Croat was already kicked out, right? So I think it makes sense they just wouldn't know of each other. There's just a lot of unresolved story there between Negan and what he did to Dwight and Sherry. Like, they even talk about him still to this day. Like that story there, in season 7 is just, it's really scarred a lot of characters, Maggie especially, but Dwight and Sherry as well. And they still talk about that. So I think a reunion between these characters would be so powerful. There's a lot that they're able to do here. There's so much story that has just, again, All Out War was such a big story. When you go back to season 7 and 8, there was so much there because we got into so many new characters. Like there was just like this big expansion of the universe out of nowhere. So many characters were introduced that, a lot of characters just sort of fell off, and there was a lot of unresolved stories. And I think Dwight and Negan and just all of that is definitely one of them. And so, in terms of Dwight actually showing up to Dead City, I think it makes sense, because like what's next for him anyways? He's a very popular Walking Dead character. Like, what, are they just going to like end his story on Fear the Walking Dead and that's it? No, never. I really don't see that. So overall, I would say that I think that this is very possible. I don't know about season 2. I think it would be really amazing, but maybe they're saving that for like season 3. But I do think Dwight should return. I hope that it is in a role where he is like this main villain sort of thing of a season. I think it would be so cool to see the roles reversed in that way, and just to see how he reacts to handling somebody like Negan. Yeah, you could argue that it's sort of a rehash story of like the Croat versus Negan, which is sort of the same thing, like a former Savior who was mad at Negan. But I don't know, I think with Dwight, it's just a little different because we saw everything that happened to him, right? Like we saw what Negan did to him. So it would be a little bit different. You could change a lot of the story dynamics there too, because Sherry would also be involved, right? So there's a lot that they're able to do there, and I do hope that this does actually happen for season 2. So anyways, post all your thoughts down below. Do you want Dwight to return as a villain on The Walking Dead City Season 2? I'm also thinking of posting a Dead City, I guess, Simon video later on after the episode releases or I guess on cable. So yeah, stay tuned for that if that does eventually come out there, because his return's honestly really amazing. Like, honestly, I was so shocked to actually see him. So yeah, anyways, post all your thoughts down below. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.